evening, good evening, good evening. How's it going this evening? It's Thursday night, favorite time of the week again. Getting ready to jump on here and change the conversation a little bit. That's how we're looking at it.
Hi everybody, I'm in the background. I hope everybody's doing well. I am just positioning the camera in a way that everyone can see. I thank you for joining Judy Hendricks and introducing LP White. Thank you. You're new, so we're hoping that you enjoy the content and you will participate. We are talking Why Not Me, or the title I have is Are You Worthy of What You Want? I'm not even quite sure because I'm not on screen. I cannot see what's happening, but
people are joining in.
Everybody, but now they can't see. Hey everybody. Trying to get camera angles is always the worst doing a live show because you just never know what's happening. Hi everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Happy Thursday. I hope everybody's had a good week. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving last week. And that is it. Are you worthy of what you want? And this was inspired by a shot that was fired at Rob. And I am way too far from the thing to even find it. But one of those days, everybody. I'm definitely having one of those days. I don't expect to be as energetic as I usually am. I'm not in the best of mood. So I'm sorry you're going to get what you get tonight. But it's still going to be good.
Be all right.
Again, are you worthy of the one? Is what we're talking about. Are you worthy of the one you want? Are you worthy of what you want as a whole? And why not me? And a lot of people always ask, why not me? Why not me? Why am I not the one? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to wait a couple of minutes for people to come in.
Let's see who joins.
Any questions you guys have? If you want to go live, when you came into the live, if you're not familiar with it, there's a request to join button. So again, we are here to change the conversation around Black relationships, but we're not trying to do it alone. So if there are people who want to pipe in for the topic that we are talking about, or who disagree, agree, have a differing point of view, we want to hear it all because, like I always say in the promo, let's change it together. Again, we're just talking about our situation and what has worked for us, what we've dealt with in the past, but we also want to hear from other people. So again, when you come in, there is a request to join button, and you can click on that. We'll see it on the screen, and then we can add you in to the conversation. So thank you again for those who have already joined. I'm going to start sending out some and letting some other people know that we are live, and I'm sorry that that was very loud because Rob's phone is not down. And again, it's just one of those days, and I don't even know how to actually use an iPhone, to be completely honest with you. I am the worst when it comes to trying to use an iPhone. I gladly admit it. iPhones are not for me. I find the iPad very useful. I actually found it super useful today because I am writing my 8th book. It's also going to be the title of the show. It's called Fuck Your Feelings, A Journey to Imperfect Love. And I found that instead of worrying about the magic keyboard, I could just dictate my book. And so it made me super productive today that I could actually sit there and dictate the book. So that was something, and I'm sure it's probably been around, but I'm so used to typing on a laptop. And again, if you don't have an iPad or an iPad Pro, I believe that's what we have is the iPad Pro, and you are a writer or anything, I would suggest that dictation method because I was super, super productive today again, writing the book. Again, my 8th book will be coming out, and it's called Fuck Your Feelings, A Journey to Imperfect Love, because I don't think people realize that there is no perfect love, because there's no perfect you, and there's no perfect the other person. And so when you're looking for love, as much as it might sound, and Disney has told us as women that it's rainbows and butterfly, any love you find is going to be imperfect. It's up to you to make it work. And that's kind of what the show is about. Why not me? And again, are you worthy of what you want? I'm just sending out a few of these, and I will be ready to go. Thank you, Love and Nana, for joining. I hope I've gotten that right. Sometimes I get things wrong. If I've gotten it wrong, please let me know. Robert?
I believe that's accurate. I'm not certain. But yeah, and I did think it was a point that you just made, like when people are out there looking for love. We might get into that a little bit later. Maybe looking for love is not the best way to go about things. Maybe folks would find more success by looking for someone who's looking to love them. That seems a bit more like a productive venture.
Is looking for love at all even a wise thing to do? Can you actually look for love? Hey, Queen Jada. Thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of our conversation.
I think that's a good way of looking at it. When you're looking, you usually find something. It might not be what you're looking for, but you'll definitely find something when you're out there looking. Hey. So, again, maybe there'd be a bit more success for people by kind of keeping their eyes and ears open for someone who's looking to love them, someone who is looking for the type of person that they are, as opposed to trying to come up with your list of all of the criteria that you feel like that you need and going around searching for that. I think, again, you'll probably wind up with some stuff you weren't looking for like that too.
Okay, so as people are coming in, we started a new section last week of the show called Shots Fired. And basically, the shots fired are shots that are being fired at us. And again, you don't get to call the show Fuck Your Feelings and then have feelings when people are coming in with their thoughts about our relationship, us as individuals, us as a collective, all of that. And so this week we had put out a post, and it was basically a post of Rob saying that, I think a lot of women don't realize that being a wife is a duty. Right? And that being a wife is a job. There are a lot of women who want to get married but actually don't understand that being a wife is a duty. And someone fired at him. I think they've since deleted the comment, and I screenshot it, but it's all the way over there. However, basically, they were saying, how dare Rob try to give advice or anybody take advice from Rob, and he don't even know how to hold a relationship. And so me, in my own snarky way, responded on the Fuck Your Feelings show and said, you sound hurt. Did you want next? So again, Fuck Your Feelings, the show has its own personality. Fuck Your Feelings, the show has its own personality. So if you get a comment from Fuck Your Feelings, it is completely Fuck Your Feelings. So again, there are people who think that because a relationship didn't work between two people, that the two people in that relationship don't know how to sustain relationships. And we disagree with that. There are times that two people are just not good together.
Absolutely.
And I know I've been in situations where I wasn't good for the person I was with. And it is even so much so that they weren't good for me. I think in my situation, and you'll read about it, and I hope everybody does get my book when it comes out in March, I talk about being 21 years old, having a baby, and deciding that I didn't want any more children. I'm not a kid person. I love my daughter. She is, a blessing. But to have any more children wasn't a thing I was going to do, nor was I going to have children with different men, because I don't fundamentally believe in that. And so when I was dating men, I was meeting a lot of men who were single and childless. So I couldn't be that person for them, because I wouldn't have been in a position to be able to give them what they want. And I met some amazing men, well-established, amazing men. But what kind of selfish bitch would I be to say, yes, pick me, pick me, pick me, I'm the one for you, when in the reality, I was bringing my little liability along, but I wouldn't be able to give them their child. And so in those situations, I was very well aware, as much as I wanted that, I wasn't worthy of what I wanted. And I think as people, especially as women, because again, we're being taught these days that we can have it all and we cannot, we have to really consider, are you worthy? This is why I named the show, Are You Worthy of What You Want?
And again, I think that's a very good way of looking at it. I know for certain that the way that I am has caused friction in my previous relationships. For example, one thing is when the static starts, once there's, the back and forth, the arguing, the tit for tat, I just kind of shut it down. I'm not really into all of that stuff. I don't like to argue. I don't like the yelling and the just saying stuff just to get a response type of stuff. So my tendency is, once it starts going in that direction, is to just shut down. I ain't got nothing to say, while you're in that space. And on the flip side of that, I have experienced that the other person, when confronted with that attitude of, oh, you're just not going to talk anymore, you don't have anything to say anymore, that person tends to think that that's because you don't care, you're not worried about it, you could give a flying hootenanny. And usually it exacerbates the problem. It makes the issues even more significant. So I believe that in a relationship, you either bring out the best in somebody or you are going to bring out the worst in them. There's not a whole lot of in between. That's why you can take a person and they can have 5 or 6 consecutive struggling relationships. You'll probably see some common themes amongst those. And then once there's some different choices being made, once the direction goes in a different direction, you'll usually start to see something change. It might not be better, it could actually get worse, but you will see a change.
And I just want to be clear, Chamitonio, that's France, Brazil, and America, clearly. And what's that? It's a hibiscus flower, right? Can you just confirm that? Sorry, I was just looking down and realized that. And I like to be right about things. But I think it's a hibiscus, and that's France, Brazil, and America. And good for you, because that's quite the mix. And so I agree. I think there are a lot of people wasting their time in relationships going nowhere. And unfortunately, you don't know sometimes that you're in a relationship going, oh, Philippines. Awesome. Welcome. I love that. How did I miss that? I thought that was the French flag. Anywho, but yeah, you got it. Thank you. I did get it right. So I think that people need to determine if you're in a relationship that's going nowhere. And realistically, if the person that you're with brings out the best in you, and if you bring out the best in the other people, because the reality is sometimes we don't. I have seen people in relationship for 10 years and didn't lead to marriage, didn't lead to kids, didn't lead to anything. And then they get into another relationship, and 2 years later, they've gotten married, bought a house, and are living very happy with that person. And, sometimes if you're the woman who spent 10 years with a man, and then 2 years later, you get a invite to a wedding or whatever the case might be, you're going to be big mad. But who are you mad at? Are you mad at yourself, or are you mad at the other person? Because at some point, if you don't require anything of someone, they're not going to give you anything. Why would you, if you don't require anything? If your job simply required you to clock in and clock out with minimal effort, but you still got your paycheck, how much effort are you putting into your job?
And I would even look at it like, you know, when you're doing something different, you'll usually get a different result. You know, you can be in a situation, like you said, with the same situation, same person for years and years and years and years, but it doesn't quite, you know, you guys just don't ever quite get on the same page. And then you can take, not even, you know, yourself, you can say that other person, and then they get into another relationship. And I think that, you know, there's a saying, you take you with you. When you kind of learn from the mistakes, you learn from some of the bad choices, you learn from some of the wrong decisions that you make in your life, you start to do things a little bit differently. And I think that change also adds into the next situation, you know. I think if you leave out of one relationship and go in with the exact same mentality, the exact same emotions, the exact same thoughts, the exact same traumas, you probably are just going to get another version of a bad situation. But when you take time to process what kind of happened, you know, what you contributed to it, what you'd like to avoid, those type of things, I think you can get different results. You know, you should get different results.
Well, that's called accountability. And you don't need a psych degree, which I do have, to know that most people don't like to take accountability. It is easier to blame the other person than to blame yourself. And that's the reality. The best lesson I ever learned about relationships, especially failed relationships or failed situation, is I am the common denominator in all of my failed relationships, whether it's a failed business, a failed relationship, a failed friendship. Like you said, you take you everywhere. Well, if that's the case, I am the common denominator. And so if I've had 5 failed relationships, friendships, or romantic, I failed with 5 people. How could it always be that other person? But unfortunately, in this new age where people are getting, you know, medals for showing up but not doing anything, nobody knows how to take accountability anymore and saying, shit, where did I go wrong? Where did, you know, what could I have done better? What did I do to contribute to the failure of my relationship? And I know, again, you know, writing a book about my life, you know, today I had a moment, I was writing part of my life and I had to kind of sit back because I was like, you know, I was going through the experience again, but I was writing from a sense of, listen, I couldn't put someone in a situation, no matter how much, you know, that was what I wanted. I wasn't what they needed, right? So. No.
She said, what is this energy?
Yeah, I'm not pleased today. So that's, Mama Ju, that's the energy. Because Rob left the house and showed up 10 minutes before the show. So let's just say I'm not in the best of mood, but I'm still here. So he left the house at 7 a.m. and came home at 5:47. Right before the show. So, anywho, but I think that is the situation that I think people have to consider. You know, what did you do? Like, what have I done in order to keep having the same thing happen to me, as opposed to what have other people done to me for the same thing to keep happening to me?
Yeah, I think that's really where it's at, is that, like, Uncle Kevin has a saying, he's like, what went wrong in your last relationship without blaming the other person? And honestly, that's more difficult than you think, because we're human and we automatically want to focus on what the other person did that we don't like. But when you start chopping that back and start looking at the actual relationship and look at, again, how you were contributing, the things that you added to the situation, you know, the issues that you made more prevalent, you can start to get a little bit of a different spin on things. You can start to see, oh, okay, I can see why that's probably not comfortable to deal with me when I'm behaving in that way or moving in that space or whatever the case may be. But I think it really does come from the accountability, the looking at yourself. Because the fact of the matter is, you can be in 1,000 relationships and you'll never have the ability to change what the other person thinks, does, says, how they move, any of that. The only person you truly do have control over is yourself. You know, that's really the only place where you can create change is within yourself. You cannot cause that with nobody else.
And so again, if you start to think, and I think it's interesting about wants and needs. And I think a lot of people go for what they want and not necessarily what they need. And sometimes what you want isn't what the other person needs. And I think that's the difficult part, because I think as humans, we want to satisfy our own selfish needs, right? Like, I want what I want, and I should get what I want.
Definitely.
But is what you want conducive to what the other person needs?
Right.
Because if you think about your relationships, because the shots were fired at you, and in full transparency, you know, I am Rob's 4th relationship. He had a high school girlfriend. Rob had a wife. I actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna cap. I don't feel he has 4 relationships. I think I'm his 3rd relationship. Rob had a high school girlfriend. He had a wife. He has a baby mama, and he had me. So those are the relationship. The baby mama wasn't even a relationship. She was a woman who got pregnant and had his babies. But I digress. So that is what Rob has been, and he's 45 years old and played pro basketball 7.5 years. So it was funny that the shot was fired at him about his inability to have relationships, when if you look at track records, my track record is actually a hell of a lot worse than his. So it was funny that the shot was fired at him, and we clearly felt it was someone. And shout out to Black Trees if she comes up here for, you know, I shouted her out when we put it out today. Shout out to her for giving us the topic. But it's so interesting because I think there's a perception of him, because I'm sure, again, hearing from a woman's point of view why a relationships didn't work is very different than hearing from a man's point of view. You know, I have a clip out there where I got asked a question from our question bowl, is who's basically more trusting in the relationship. So it was something like that. It was like Rob or me. And I was like, honestly, Rob is more trusting in the relationship, because Rob's inclination to leave is a lot less than mine. Rob has a stick-to-itiveness that I wish I had. Rob has stuck in relationships that he should have probably not ever been in. When he tells me about some of his relationship history, as a woman, I'm like, really? Like, and you still got with this person? Like, what the hell were you thinking? But when he's made up his mind to be in something, he sees it through. And, you know, hats off to you, because I'm a bitch that leaves. Thank you, Mama Judith. So my mother-in-law has said,
defended me.
Rob has never had a stable, sane mate. He's got one now. Trust that. So thank you, Mama Judith, for that.
I'm saying, but
I have my moments. I'm Jamaican, and Twin Zinc is not here to count, but I'm Jamaican, so that is always my excuse for whatever. But I think, thank you. Sending y'all lots of love today. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. I'm interested in dating Black men in a year or two, and I'm doing my best to research. I've only dated Asian men before. Good for you, girl. Reach out to me.
Yes.
DM me. I will absolutely help you on how to do that, because Black women may not like that I'm saying that, but that's the reality, is Black men need love too. And the problem is, I think there has been so much focus on what us as Black women need, want, and desire. And, you know, Uncle Kevin is getting a lot of flack for him saying what he's saying. And in the reality is, that has been what has been working. I don't know if Rob and I would be where we're sitting right here if in our relationship, his focus had to be entirely on me. Rob and I are in this relationship because whether I like it or not, I have an obsession with Rob. I do. I am like literally obsessed with him as a person. And I think that helps him. I am literally always covering him with love, even in moments where I'm pissed. Like right now, I cover him with love. My love is important to carry him through the day. And I think it was funny because I put out a question today, and it was like, you know, do women feel weak by saying I'm sorry to a man?
Ooh.
And it was interesting Because I think in these days of, again, in my other book, No Handouts for Black Girl, I talk about the fallacy of the strong black woman. We've been taught so much to be strong that we've forgotten how to be women and how to be feminine and how to have real, genuine female emotions. So instead of saying words like, I'm sorry, as women we say, I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize if you feel that I was wrong. As opposed to, I'm sorry that I hurt you. You see the difference?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a typical female apology, too. I'm sorry that you feel like I disrespected you. So it's kind of deflects away the actual situation and puts it purely on, fuck your feelings. That's how you feel. It couldn't be that, no, you actually did disrespect that man. And not only isn't he's in his feelings, he's in his head. Because as a man or as a woman, I think it is hard to reconcile disrespect from someone that you feel is supposed to be with you or want to be with you, or it just doesn't add up necessarily.
So when I asked the question, when I was thinking about that today, and I asked the question, are you worthy of what you want? I started thinking, just even in the simple case of, if you find the person you love, do you have the ability to put your ego aside to be with them? Because I think when we think about relationships, how much relationships get broken apart because of ego?
All the time.
All the time. And, we have a relationship contract, and we've talked about this before, but our number one rule is no disrespect. But one of the principles of our relationship is we don't make permanent decisions on temporary feelings. I'm going to repeat it again because I think you guys need to listen to this one. We do not make permanent decisions on temporary feelings. And often when those lines of disrespect are crossed, it's because people are in their temporary feelings.
I agree. And usually long-term decisions made based on a temporary feeling will not hold up, because your feelings will subside. You'll probably change your mind about it. They have the saying, time heals all wounds, which is fairly accurate. I'd be kind of crazy still holding on to a slight from 1997. You know what I mean? That's a lot of energy and time that you held on to those feelings. Why haven't you just moved on past it?
I think I would have a problem holding on to something from July. It's December.
I mean, seriously.
Right? I think it's interesting because when you think about the demise of I'm going to put it on you because you've had more long-term relationships than I have. I've also been married, but I left my husband because he had outside babies, which is also going to be in the book, Fuck Your Feelings, coming out in March. So I had legitimate reasons for leaving, because he was just raw dogging anybody and bringing home babies. But I digress. Therapy. Therapy's a good thing, ladies. Therapy. But anyways, when you think about the demise in your relationship, what can you say that you did to cause it, and what could have been done for you to stay in the relationships that you left?
My stubbornness definitely doesn't help anything. The fact that I'm very headstrong probably does not help very much.
It does not.
What I could have did to stay, nothing. I don't think that those situations were really meant for me to be there for long term, Could I look at it maybe if I did some things differently, that maybe it would not have been as, gotten to the point of toxicity that it did? Sure. But I think that's a part of it, especially when you're stubborn like I am. Once I start down that road of digging in on a position, it's almost impossible to move me out of it unless something happens to change my mind, unless some new information is presented to change my mind. I'm a person, if you ask me the same question 1,000 times, I'm going to answer it the same way 1,000 times, unless you change the question you're asking me.
So let me ask you a question, because I asked a couple of questions on this week's poll, and I'm so completely unprepared today, guys. But I have the questions here, and this was a good question. I asked people if they are relationship material. Are you relationship material? 80% said yes, and 20% said no. Before we go into this, Mama Judith says nothing could have been done. Those relationships were doomed, but they taught him how to grow. They gave him what he needed to be your man. Thank you, Mama Judith. Again, are you relationship material? Do you think that you were relationship material while you were in those relationships?
Ooh, that's a good question. Totally fair assessment. No, because the way I look at it now as a fully formed grown man, if you're learning how to be in a relationship while you're in the relationship, it's hard to say you were ready for the relationship.
Ooh. If you're learning how to be in the relationship when you're in the relationship, that is an interesting one. And I'm going to put that even now to the ladies. You can't want to get married until you know how to be a wife.
Correct.
Being a wife or being a husband isn't on the job training. There are not a lot of jobs, period, that are on the job training. We have gone away from the days of apprenticeship. If you want to learn something, you pay your dollars, you find a mentor, and even then you have to pay. So I think what was interesting is a lot of people are saying, I'm ready, I'm worthy, but they don't know how to actually play the role that they're in, because Rob is right. And that shot fired was so funny because the men all agreed with what he's saying. Being a husband is a duty. Therefore, being a wife is a duty. It is a job. It is just as important as the job you get paid for when you clock in and clock out every day. However, it doesn't seem that people are putting in as much effort to be really good at that job as they are to be good at the job that pays them. And I will give you an example. We got even more shots fired at us, like, bah, 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 bah. Like it was, you know guns better. What's the gun that does that?
So many of them.
Whatever. The bazooka or whatever. I don't even know.
There you go.
Uzi, whatever. So we got shots fired because there was a poll that was put out on another page, and it asked a question: who gets their plate first at the dinner table? Your child or your husband? So anybody want to answer this question? Because I'm going to pause for a second. If you are in a relationship, if you are married, if you're in a cohabitation, and even if the child is biologically yours and not his, or biologically his and not yours, if you're at the table, who do you serve first? As the woman, generally you're the one cooking. And so I know when I am in the kitchen, I cook the meal and I then serve the plate. Who do you serve first? Or back in the day, they used to say...
There you go. See, they know how to rate. They're doing well in the Philippines, though. Like, it's a kind of a...
Husband, then kid, then you. Thank you, Chammy Tonio.
What?
But on Black News page... Thank you from the Philippines. But on the Black News page, 75% of those who answered said your child should get the plate first. And 25% then said your man. And for people who don't know, if you're on Rob's page, I'm actually the one who's posting and generally responding to you. He responds every once in a while as his. I respond under fuck your feelings. But the reality is, when I put that post up, I said, not in our house. There is no way in God's green heaven am I going to give the children their plate first before I give it to him. That's it doesn't work that way. But a lot of women got mad because I also said, if that is your mentality, maybe you're not ready to be a wife. That, like, we got a lot of shots fired, but that's the truth. You don't learn how to be a wife. And if men are truly honest, men, if you're honest with yourself and not the BS, the PR role that men now have to play to get into a relationship. If you're honest with yourself, if your woman is serving your child first or her child first, because there's a lot of men going in as stepfathers, there is no way you feel good about it. You may accept it, but you damn well don't feel good about that. Shammy Tony also said, I'm a culprit of my mom feeding us her kids first always. She's stubborn to feed herself at times. And again, if you're a single parent, that makes sense. If I'm a single parent, it makes sense for me to feed my child first. I always did that. I was a single mom for years. I fed my daughter first. But if there was a man in our home and that man was a man that was with me, he's getting his plate first. And, I cry a little bit inside when I hear that, because I go, well, if that is the case and the man who brings home the money and puts the food on the table is being treated as a second-class citizen, how do women want to be treated as queens but treat the men in their life as second-class citizens? That's what I'm confused about. And so asking this question, are you worthy of what you want? I know a lot of women will say yes, but if 75% of people are saying they feed their kids before their men, the answer is a resounding no.
Well, yeah, I think that comes from a lot of different places. I think that modern relationships have thrown out the rank and file. And here's an interesting question, a way of looking at it. In a home with a man and a woman, is the woman ever the head of the household?
No.
Thank you.
Absolutely not.
That's how I look at it. I don't see, he can make 100,000, he can make 20,000, but he's still the head of the household. So if you were going to a luncheon and there was the CEO of your company, the director of your company, and the manager of your company, who would you address first?
The direct CEO. You said CEO, director, manager, the CEO
You
first.
would address the highest ranking individual first and then go down the line. Some of y'all seem to want to go take a beeline over there to the manager and disregard the guy who runs the entire company. That doesn't seem to make sense.
You want to know why? Because they haven't been taught how to navigate that space. Right? Think about it. How many people are actually taught how to navigate spaces that they're in? People just kind of show up, and again, they want to learn on the job. I think about, back in the day, and it still happens, I think, in southern parts of the U.S. and, across the Caribbean and stuff. Like, there are women teaching other women how to be women, and teaching them how to be wives, and teaching them how to walk, how to talk, how to present themselves to men. All of these things. There's these, debutante balls that I know happen in Atlanta, and there are women who are actually being groomed to be the wives of successful men. And part of that is understanding that basic principle of how do you navigate a room. Are people being taught that anymore?
I don't know, but I totally see where you're coming from with that one. But where I was really going with it is I think that there's a lot of people that think that it's not a requirement for the man to be the head of the household. And I just don't see how it works otherwise.
Well, that's why if the stats are right, if that's the case, that's why 1 in 4 black women are getting married. Because if that is the case, then again, we're not being taught how to be wives, because no one thinks that's important anymore. That's the reality. People don't think it's important to be wives anymore. Black women, since feminism, the 1960s, second wave feminism, were taught that we're supposed to go out there and get the bag. We're supposed to go out there and be independent. We're supposed to go out there and do that. So the idea of how to be a wife, how to actually be a mother, some people are mothers by accident. Like, oops, I got pregnant. I want to keep the man, your second baby mama, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a baby. I don't even actually know how to navigate a space as a mother, even though it is a job that you can learn on the job. But there's some people who actually naturally know how to be mothers. I don't love kids, but I actually naturally know how to be a mother, right? And there's certain things that you do to be a mother. But unfortunately, I don't think people are taking, the role, the responsibility, the duty of a wife as paramount as they did before.
I don't understand that. So my mom made a comment. It's all relative.
Oh, no, no, hot dogs and
dismiss
noodles.
these women who serve their man steak and crab while they give their children hot dogs and noodles.
Ooh.
Don't dismiss how skewed we are as black women. Well, I don't want to dismiss that. That's terrible. I would even wonder, like, who's the dude sitting there eating steak and crab?
While his kids.
Well, they must not be his kids.
That must not be his kids.
Must not be.
And that would be a shame too if there are women who are giving a man all of that.
Daddy, steak and lobster, and the kids eating hot dogs and noodles.
It's a no from us, dog.
Crazy.
No.
I think that I don't think that a man with a right perspective will be comfortable sitting at a dinner table eating lobster and steak while the kids eating hot dogs and ramen. That just doesn't fit. But I am certain it happens. You know, that's not something I'm gonna dismiss as it doesn't happen. But what I started thinking too is like, I think a lot of that just is in perspective. Like, for so many years, for so long, the narrative, especially from women to other women, it's been like sharing of these horror stories, sharing of all of these things that went wrong, sharing of all of the negative things. And I think that starts to get carried over into other relationships. You've seen, this happened in your girl's relationship, and this kind of going on. But I started really thinking, like, so it's kind of commonly accepted that marriage is a 50-50 proposition, right?
Yes.
So they're saying about half of them end in divorce. What's that mean the other half do?
They're working to stay together.
They're still together.
They're working to stay together.
So why, and again, I am the biggest, a big culprit of, I'm not a big fan of marriage, but if half of them are working, why is all the focus on the ones that don't? Why do we not champion successful marriages, successful long-term couples? Like, why aren't they like role models and like people that we look up to in in our communities? It almost seems in this day and age, long-term relationships kind of get frowned on. It's almost like, oh, you ain't got nowhere else to go. You ain't got nothing else to do. She said they are never his kids. I mean, we got women out here supporting having 6 kids by 6 baby daddies because $2,000 equates success for her, and she's proud of her math. That's like I said, the baby daddy algebra that should not be taught in any schools, and
So back to your question about why successful marriages are not championed, because it is easier to focus on negative than it is to focus on positive. And that's been the skew recently I've seen. When a positive story comes out, think about when a positive thing comes out, if you look at any of these gossip sites. And I look at the insights, how many people like them, how many people viewed them, how many people commented on them. Less people comment on the positive thing than they comment on the negative. Because like it or not, not everybody wants to see people win. And when you're in a successful relationship, it's almost like you're winning. So the person who commented on Rob's page about the fact that he didn't have a successful relationship, so how dare, it's because in their mind right now we're winning. And it's better to see us fail because that fits someone's narrative. He's just bad at relationships. It wasn't me. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, no.
So if you're bad at relationships and our relationship isn't successful, that means, again, it's easier to create the narrative to everyone outside of the relationship that it's you, not them.
Well, yeah. That's if I'm running around talking about turkey is horrible, turkey's dry, turkey's nasty, ain't no good way to prepare a turkey, it ain't got no flavor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Gordon Ramsay, if somebody comes along and hooks up a turkey breast, I kind of have to keep that energy up, you know what I mean? Even in spite of the fact that this food is delicious, most people will still sit there in the space of, I don't eat that, I don't like that, I don't mess with that. It's like I'd rather affirm the negative than try something different.
And that's the reality. And I think, again, I'm going to ask the question over and over again to people about Are you worthy of what you want? Because just like you have to qualify for a job, you have to qualify for a relationship. You have to qualify for everything. You can't have a middle income even though you have good credit and buy a Bentley. It's not possible. Why? You don't qualify for a Bentley. There are certain reasons certain people drive certain cars. That's because that's what they qualify for. And there are certain reasons certain people are in certain relationships because that's what they qualify. And I know it's so tough in this. We can have it all, especially for women. I think as men understand. I have sat down with men who I have met in the past, who've gone, I haven't seen them in 5-10 years, who've come back to me, who've actually said, when I first met you, I didn't think I qualified for you. But I went out, I got a better education, I got a better job, I got whatever it is that they got, and now I'm presenting myself to you because I think I'm worthy of you. I always feel like men intrinsically know that, but women don't. I don't know, you're a man.
No, well, I mean, that's like saying all women are nonsensical, and I don't want to do that. But I think that...
I never said all women are nonsensical. I said it's an intrinsic feeling.
Why are you defending? Like, I'm just saying that I think, especially when a woman's in her in her masculine energy, we've all heard it or seen it or been out in public somewhere where you see a guy trying to get a girl's attention and she doesn't give him any attention, and then he starts spazzing, starts calling her out her name, bitch this, just goes crazy with it. I think women can have that same energy though, if a woman throws it at you and you don't catch it, it's you're gay, it's all these other things other than maybe he's not checking for you like that. I think that it is almost believed that men just get down with whatever is presented to them. And I don't know a lot of guys that just are like that. I really don't. Most of the guys that I am familiar with and deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not talking about fooling around business. I'm talking about relationship business. Most guys tend to kind of look at that a little more closely, And
I think that's good for the clarification, because I think they're two different things. Who a man settles down with and who a man fucks, this is fuck your feelings after all, could be very different.
Very different.
There are women, there are women who will judge you by who you also get pregnant. And there are men who will judge you by who got you pregnant, right?
Yeah.
And those are things that people don't consider. There are men who will go, that's your baby daddy? Really? You chose him? That's interesting. And now you require more of me? That's a man you chose to have some babies with. How can you require more of me when look at the men that you now are bonded with for life? There are women who do the same thing. This is the woman you chose to have babies with? What do you require of me? And this is why, again, when you're making choices and making decisions, you need to, again, not make permanent decisions on temporary feelings. When I decided not to have any more babies, that was a permanent decision. No matter what man came into my life, and many a great man did, in those temporary moments, because I was feeling it and wooing and getting wooed, that permanent decision never changed. It never changed because I fundamentally knew making a decision to have another child would change the course of my life, and that was not something I'm prepared to do. And so when we are choosing people to have relationships with, we have to think, does this fit the trajectory of my life? You won't fail, that isn't your collective story. Keep shining, because there's no shortage of haters to show up to taint your shine. Keep growing together. You won't fail. Keep glowing and own your reciprocal glow. Chamie Tonio, taking deep breaths. Y'all are schooling me. Thank you, sweetie. But that's important. We have to think about, we're at the point, especially as a man and woman, when you start getting into your 20s and 30s and you start thinking about, where's my future going? You should be choosing someone who is going to be able to help you level up, because to me, that's the nature of relationship. If I think about my grandparents, if I think about my parents, because I have two different sets of parents. I've got my biological mom, and I have my stepdad and my stepmom, my dad and my stepmom. But if I think about it, I remember my sister saying, when my mother and father married, when they were younger. And by the time I was born, my dad now was 35. They had gotten married in their 20s. My father had leveled up. So it's funny, we went back to Jamaica when I turned 40, and she drove me by and she was like, this is a house that we grew up in before you were born. Because by the time you were born, Daddy had leveled up, but he had leveled up because of his choice of wife. My stepmom was the type of woman he needed to help him to bring him to the next level. She spoke the language she needed to speak in terms of when he navigated the corporate world. She could take care of the home in the way that he wanted. He could know that his children would be educated and raised in the way that he wanted. And so when you're making decisions, again, marriage is a permanent decision. Who you cohabitate with is a permanent decision. Who you have children with is a permanent decision. So again, in those temporary moments where you're feeling it and wooing, you've got to think, if this is what the rest of my life will look like with this person, is that what I want? Which again begs me to ask, are you worthy of what you want?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. It definitely, I would even take it a step further. Do you even know what you want? I think that's difficult in and of itself. And to take it even a step further, identifying your wants is one thing. Knowing what you need is something totally different. And it does take some serious, dealing with yourself and looking at yourself and assessing yourself to figure out what you need, what it is that you actually need out of a relationship.
That's a good one.
Because it's like, you don't see a lot of car companies buy cookie companies because they ain't in the same business. They're not remotely close to the same business. So how is a car company supposed to take over a cookie business and steer it towards success? And I think in relationships, there's a lot of car companies that buy cookie companies and vice versa. When you're looking at identifying who's good for you in a relationship, I think it is important to be in the same business. Like I said, going back, one thing that I learned with Toshiba was that a big part of it is political and religious ideologies. If those things don't have a rather high degree of alignment, I don't think most people give credit to how difficult that relationship is. Now, in a place like India, I've traveled to India before, you have Catholics and Hindus and Buddhists, and because they're raised in a space of your religion is your business, and my religion is my business, and I don't get to look down or up or sneer or cheer or any of that. We can be a successful coupling, and you don't have to turn your back on your God, and I don't have to turn my back on my God. Mm-hmm. We're not raised like that in America. If I'm a staunch Muslim and she's a staunch Catholic, it will impact the relationship, I guarantee you. Because we're not raised here to respect other religions. We're taught here, your religion is right, everybody else is wrong, and they're going to hell.
But again, I think here's the part though, relationships take work. And the reality is, if you are in a situation, because, I grew up in Canada. And so unlike the United States, where it's a melting pot, Canada is what they consider a mosaic, and Canada's got its own problems, Indigenous people, but that's just for another time. But you're taught to respect others people's religion, and not only to respect, you learn about other people's religion. You're learning. There are certain days, like, people learn about Ramadan. People learn about Yom Kippur. People learn about all of these different religions because, again, we live in a country that is the most diverse. Toronto, where I was from, is the most diverse city in the entire world. And so we were taught not only tolerance, but acceptance and trying to understand. And so, the issues that you guys have in America with those things are not what we are necessarily exposed to in Canada, because when people get together and they have those differences, they're usually aligned in other ways, and so they work to overcome. I think the problem is not enough people are working anymore relationship, because everybody wants to be couple goals. It is easier for me to leave you than to work to stay together. Yeah. It is much easier. It is much easier to have that bump in the road and said, oh, I don't want to do this anymore because it's hard. Relationships are supposed to be hard. They're not supposed to be easy. And I'm sorry for any ladies who were told that when they were growing up, that you're supposed to find your prince, fall in love, and you're supposed to live happily ever after, and it's going to be butterflies and rainbows. That is wrong. And if I'm the first person to tell you that, you're welcome. Relationships are supposed to take work. Now, there comes a point where one person's working too much, and you've got to decide, is this worth it? Because the reality is both people have to be working as much to keep the relationship together. Like, it cannot be a one-sided work. I can't be giving 80% of the work and you're sitting by and just giving 20 to sustain the relationship. No, but the idea that relationships are just supposed to be easy and there's no work involved, that's a Disney narrative, and it's not the reality. But unfortunately, that's what people want, and that's why I had to ask the question today of, do women feel weak when they say I'm sorry? Because feelings require vulnerability. And especially as Black women today, I had to learn in therapy that vulnerability did not equate weakness.
But yeah, that's a big thing though. I think that's a massive undertaking, especially in American culture, to get people to understand that vulnerability and weakness don't mean the same thing. You know what I mean? And without truly being vulnerable, you're probably not going to experience a lot of what life has to offer, because you're on defense mode all the time. All the time.
And it's funny, thank you for saying that. I'm not going to call the woman out. I had your phone in my hand, cool now. But when we asked that question about who got fed first, there was one woman who I had a very healthy exchange with back and forth, but she basically said to me, children are not asked to be brought into the world. We carry them for 9 months. Children will stay with us forever, but there is no guarantee that a man will stay with you. And therefore, it is very important that you take care of your children more than you take care of a man, because men leave. And I had to be like, sis, children leave too. Children leave. You're supposed to raise your children to leave your home. There are a lot of women who are banking on their children to be their retirement plan. They're banking on their children to be around them forever. My mother was one of those people. I didn't live very far from my mother. The furthest I lived from my mother was 15 minutes. I didn't go away to NYU, where my dad worked, where I could have went to go for free, because of my mother. Because it was always, I needed to stay close and take care of my mom. The reality is, if that is the mindset you have in a relationship, that one day this man will leave and I can't trust him not to leave, how are you truly and wholly loving that man? You can't be. I can't be sitting here loving you, worrying I can't give him too much love, because if I give him too much love, he's going to take advantage of me and one day he will leave.
Isn't that more reason to love him the way you're supposed to? Because think about it from the man's perspective. You're sitting there saying, I'm going to shortchange you on love in the event that you leave.
But still love me and take care of me and support me in every way possible, because that's what a man is supposed to do.
But I'm always going to keep something in the reserve. I'm always going to keep something off to the side for myself, just in case of a rainy day. How do you think that the dude is going to feel like once he figures out that's how you playing the game?
Well, it's funny, because I remember you saying to me There are a lot of women who come into relationships and keep their bags packed. A man comes into a relationship because he's decided to be in a relationship and he unpacks his things. But after a while, after a few months or a year, he's basically coming and he's basically seeing, she's got this suitcase still packed. Like, she is ready to go. She hasn't even really filled out the closet space. And again, this is figuratively, everybody. But, if you imagine it, you come into a home, he's got his big suitcases, you've got yours, you unpack one, he unpacks both, and one of yours is still there. That's how a lot of men are feeling in relationships, because women are saying, well, you're going to leave, you could leave me, you could hurt me, and so I'm always going to be ready to go. So he's giving his all because he's settled in and you're on go. That can't feel good.
Yeah, that sounds kind of ridiculous. Like, even the way you outlined it, it's like women put, the way they'll treat their kids, but I'm like, them kids ain't leaving. Kids grow up, they don't leave. Like, there's nothing that's, you know what I mean? Like, them little rugrats is going to be there. Like, they're going to be at your house tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. That man can leave. So wouldn't you want to make him stay? So you're putting all your effort into the people who have no option because you're their caregiver, you're their mom, you're their dad, you're their whoever, and the person who is actually there based on how they're treated, you're just going to be like, you get what you get while you're up in here.
And so that answers the question for a lot of women, why not me?
I think that's really the big
men
reason.
can feel when you are not invested in a relationship. And I think, a lot of men stay because they feel like their woman loves them with everything they have, right? Like, you hear Denzel Washington talk about his wife, and if you haven't had a chance, this is a woman who invested into her man. If any woman out there is wondering why Rob has chosen me over them, it's because if you really want to know, and you can read it in my upcoming book, Fuck Your Feelings, coming out in March, I invested time, effort, and money into making this relationship work, because when we had to start over, we were starting over. There are a lot of women who will not do that. There are a lot of women who say, I don't really want you, but I expect you to completely invest your time, energy, and everything into me. And that's why not you.
Yeah.
That's exactly why not you. Like, if given a chance, how many women would be okay? And I'll probably have this on another thing. How many women would be okay if their husbands were stay-at-home dads? Because there's a lot of women who are telling me that by having this show, they don't believe in gender rules. Because a gender rule would indicate your man is the head of the household. A gender rule would indicate your man gets served first. A gender rule would indicate your man is the leader. A gender rule would indicate all of that. But they'll say they don't believe in gender rules, but turn around and say, pay for the dates, and you stay home. Since you love your job so much, you stay home, and he takes care of the home. A lot of those women will be like, whoa, 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 whoa. That makes him less of a man. But sis, you don't believe in gender rules.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is just, again, stems from that feminist type of mentality of we're equals. We're paired. We're opposite sides of the same coin. I don't know if men and women are like equal, because there's things that she can accomplish that I will never be able to do, and there's things that I can accomplish that she'll never be able to do.
We're each uniquely positioned to do what we need to do. It's not, and again, talk about in my other book, No Handouts for Black Girls. When a woman is in her feminine energy, which is what she needs to be, she's equipped to do things that a man is unable to do. This is why we have gender. This is why gender is a fact. I am not equal to you. I'm simply not. I'm uniquely different. I am going to be able to do things, and I was built to do things that you were not, as you were built to do things that I am not. I'm never going to sit here and say we're equal. That is ridiculous. We're uniquely positioned to do, but again, feminism, it said we're equal and this, and that's not true. It's just not. There are things men are not able to do. That is, here's the thing, and this is going to probably be one of the last things I say. Men seem to fundamentally understand that they need women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women don't seem to fundamentally understand that they need men, and that is why, sis, why not you? If you don't have a fundamental understanding that you need a man, that's why not you. That's why you're not worthy of what you want, because a man can feel that. He understands that I know that I need him. Not even just that I want him. He fundamentally understands that I need him. When there is a bump in the night, okay, we know who's getting up. Another gender rule. It's another gender role. We know who's getting up. I am not. I am hiding behind his 6'9" ass. I'm not even getting up. I fundamentally understand that.
You know what it made me just think of? You know, there's the saying that, and you know, this is one that goes back and forth, and it's been skewed both ways. The way I've always heard it is that a woman is supposed to love a man more than he loves her. That is like so taboo to touch on in this day and age. But when I'm thinking about that, let me tell you why that is. If a man feels like he loves his woman more than she loves him, ultimately, somewhere in his head, he's going to question that. Somewhere in his head, he's open to the idea of the woman who loves him more than he loves her. It's not like a diss record, you know. It's not like I want you all in while I hold back on my side of things. What it really is again, if she is not looking at me in that way, I think ultimately that's what a guy wants out of his woman. Like, she made a comment to me before, like, you are my world. That's how a man wants to feel.
So just to preface the comment, I was talking about the fact that, you know, our love language is different, and Rob wants to give me the world, and so he does things in a way where he's out there hustling, trying to give me the world. And I said to him, I don't need the world, you are my world, right? Like, whether we're broke or we're rich, that does not fundamentally change my love for him, because he is the center of my world. And I know we're probably going to get a lot of backlash for the fact that I just said that, but guess what? That's what works. And that's why me and not the other people who were clearly waiting in line. And that's why him and not the other men, because I met someone who I could fundamentally say, rich, poor, and everything in between, I got you, you got me, let's ride this life out together. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Bad boys for life. So we're going to...
Bad relationship for life.
No, we're not Will and Jada. So we're going to get to the portion, if you're new to our show, I've got some questions in here, and I am going to have Rob pick one. My writing is small, so I'm just going to read them.
She reads them. I can't read her little tiny papers.
What's your favorite book?
Ooh, excuse me for the yawn. My favorite book, that's such a difficult one. I really do like to read, but I would probably say my favorite book is World War Z. Not the movie. The movie was cool with Brad Pitt and all of that, but the actual book is nothing like the movie. The narrative format is completely different, and there's just so much world crafting that the author did. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the world in the book is so rich, and it actually brings you from before the zombie apocalypse all the way to where it's actually starting to wane and subside, where it was just phenomenal. It's basically just this patchwork account of all of these survivors of the zombie apocalypse telling their stories, how they got where they are, what happened, all of these other things. It's just an incredible read.
Awesome. So Jamie Tonya says, nice World War Z. I'll have to look that up. Mama Judith says, ride till the wheels fall off and then write some more. That part.
There you go.
My question, how do you think we've changed both as individuals and as a couple since we first got together, for better or worse? Ooh. Why do I get these questions?
Your question.
So the question is, how do you think we've changed both as individuals and as a couple since we first got together? I think for me, I have learned, for better or for worse, what it is to have the stick-to-itiveness that makes a relationship work. I think we have had to go through, because relationships are trial and error. As you're going through relationships, some things are going to work and some things are not, and it's important for you to recalibrate. So I have learned how to do that and navigate a relationship so that, again, the goal is to stay together.
Okay.
Can you read that one?
Actually, I can. How would you feel if I made more than you? That's what off my back.
So the question was, how would you feel if I made more money? That's kind of the plan.
That's one of the good problems. Like, I don't really look at it as a negative. I would not feel emasculated by it. I've been in that situation before. And it doesn't bother me. The reality of it is, though, I would never be with a woman that I wasn't sure didn't bother her either.
That's the good point, because there are a lot of women that, and I used to be one of those women, if I'm completely honest. You know, when I was in my career, I no longer work for the man, as Rob likes to say, and I am the CEO of, like he likes to say, Stevenson Enterprises. When I was in a situation and I made over $80,000 a year, I think it was interesting because, a lot of the men that I was meeting were in the 40s and the 50s. And I had a problem with? I had a problem with it because they had a problem with it. Because they did. And I think a lot of women feel that, because there are a lot of men who feel emasculated. There is an energy shift that happens. Like, they don't feel as good about themselves. I would have a title as a director. They would have a different title. And there are a lot of men who felt, so I actually had a problem because they had a problem with it. If I had a man who was making that, had his business, had his stuff together, I was like, boo, whatever. Like, I still got you because it's good. I remember one guy took me out on a date and told me, I know you make good money so we can split the bill. I got up and left. Like, I was like, I'm not going to do that. But that's what I had a problem with. So the last question, what is your biggest fear? This one's going to get a little bit morbid. But my biggest fear in life is that my daughter passes before I do. I don't think that's just something that I like. It is, death is, and I know they said you shouldn't fear death. So death as a whole, I'm not a fan of. But the idea that I would have to bury my child is actually my biggest fear. Actually, one more each, and then we're done. Thank you for everybody who's participating.
Sure.
Thank you for showing up. Please tell all of your friends we're here to change the conversation around Black relationships. And this is Rob's last question. Jamie Tonio, thank you. Tell everybody in the Philippines to watch us and DM me, girl. I got you.
What is your favorite sport to watch and to play? Oh, geez, why did I even get this question? I think it's most people that know me know that. My favorite sport to play, obviously basketball. My favorite sport to watch, football.
I knew that. It's funny, he doesn't like, even though he played professional ball, he doesn't watch a lot of basketball. I am the basketball watcher in the house, and you would think the ex-pro ball player would be watching a ton of basketball, but the ex-pro ball player likes to watch football, and I actually the basketball. Yeah. Thank you, Twin Sing, for joining in TT Low. We're just actually finishing the show. Please watch the replay. We're actually at 8 p.m. Eastern now because we are in Arizona, and Arizona doesn't change. So we're at 6 our time and 8 your time. Tell your friends to tell your friends.
2 hours ahead.
So this is
crazy.
This is my last question. If you could trade lives with someone, who would it be? If I could trade lives with someone, who would it be? Oh my God, I actually don't know. I mean, the quick question would be to say like Rihanna, but I won't say that because I wouldn't trade lives with Rihanna. If I could have traded lives with someone else, Bob Marley. I would want to be, I know he's dead, but I would be interested to be, because as a Jamaican and Bob Marley being such a Jamaican icon and the things that he experienced and endured in the time that he was, I think that he's created a legacy that will live on for years and years and generations to come. So I would choose Bob Marley because I'm a very proud Jamaican and he's really a huge icon in our country. He fundamentally, I think, changed how people even looked at Jamaica and reggae music as a whole. So I would trade lives with Bob Marley.
That's interesting.
Right?
I think that's a good question.
Who would you trade lives with?
I didn't start thinking about it until you read the question. And the first thing that popped up was such a weird answer.
You're a weird person, so go ahead.
The Dalai Lama, because I want to know what's inside the Potala Palace.
See, again, that's interesting, right? We didn't go for people that other people would think that we would trade lives with. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I want to take the stairs down to inner earth and see if that's real and all that other stuff.
And it would be interesting when the Dalai Lama and Bob Marley got together and had a conversation. What an interesting conversation that would be.
Like the spliff
and talk about life.
Yeah, I guarantee that would be a very good conversation right there. Like, yeah, don't sleep on the Dalai Lama, man. Like, that guy is, it takes a lot of discipline and sacrifice to get into that role. Don't get it twisted.
That's correct. And yeah, that was a good answer. So thank you everybody for joining us on Fuck Your Feelings, the show where we are changing the conversation around Black relationships. Again, if you would like to be a part of the show, and we are looking for people to be a part of the show, especially if you disagree with our point of view and how we see things. We're here to change the conversation. We're not saying our way is the right way. We're saying it's the way that works for us, because our focus, again, is not to be couple goals. It's simply to stay together, and staying together requires work. So you can DM us, you can, comment, you can say whatever, or when you come on our show, just request to join us live and we will bring you in the show. Thank you once again. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow Fuck Your Feelings, the show. Any comments, let me know. Thank you, Chammy Tonio, Mama Judith, and Twin Zinc. Have a good night.
Sticking around.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Goodbye.